Okay, so today's topic is shadows, and this is just sort of an introductory lesson about shadows. So we start looking for them and observing them closely, and this is a sort of a first lesson in approaching two different simple ways to draw shadows. Then next time or next week, I'll do another lesson on shadows that's more about tones and math, like looking for the shadow shapes and how they relate to each other without drawing lines. But that's a little more advanced, so we'll just start at the beginning today. So just thinking about what are shadows actually and why they even matter. Shadows are where an object is not receiving light, right? Or, the light is blocked. So then, it goes from light to dark if we have one source of light. So it's just where light isn't penetrating or reaching. Let's see, I had some notes here that I want to make sure to follow. So another thing that's important to think about is it'll really help you draw shadows. And somebody is saying to turn off someone's video. Okay, I'm going to. Thanks for letting me know that. Sorry, just a second. Okay. Okay. Yeah, if everybody could turn off their video, just because we've had bandwidth problems. I think they're all off now. Okay, thanks for letting me know that. So one important thing when you start looking for shadows and thinking about how they work is shadows always follow form. So what that means is the shadow is going to follow the shape of the thing. So for example, I have this egg right here, right? And the light source is kind of strong, so you can't see here. But the shadow is going to follow the shape of whatever the object is, which includes if an object is on a table, it has a shadow to one side. Where it's on the table, it's going to be flat. If it's on a round object, it's going to be round. So the shadow is following or describing the form. That's actually really helpful to keep in the back of your mind when you're drawing shadows. It tells you about the shape of your object. Okay. So we're just going to talk about two kinds of shadows. So one is a shadow that's on an object, meaning if I have, so you can see here, I have a window on one side of me. So you can see how my face that's closest to the light source is in light. And then as it moves away from the light, right, it's in shadow. So you can see like on my nose, it goes from light to dark. Right, so there's a transition from light to dark. Before it gets to the part that's darkest, which is probably here, in the case of your face, or my face, there's sort of a half tone. And the half tone is it's the place where the light is moving into the dark, right? The form, it's usually rounded, is turning away from the light. And the point that gets the darkest is the point that receives the least amount of light. Now, there's another kind of shadow, which is a cast shadow. It's when an object is blocking the light. And it's casting a shadow. So these are just two things to keep in mind as we draw today. We're going to look at specific examples and draw from them. So this is sort of abstract until we actually start doing that. I mean, the real question is, why are shadows even important? I mean, my short answer to this question is they actually add a lot of life and vitality, dimensionality. They bring drawings to life, right? It's what makes your drawings start to seem real and three-dimensional. So shadows can be a really important part of creating dynamic and interesting drawings. They're also a good way to create focal points in drawings where our eye is naturally drawn to the highest point of contrast. So if I have bright white and really dark next to each other, that in a drawing creates your eye a really strong point of interest, and your eye just automatically goes there. So it's a great tool for creating dynamic drawing. Okay, so we're going to do 2 exercises and just practice making shadows in 2 different ways. One way is with lines, and the other way is with the side of your pencil, which is one is a little bit more, rigid or linear, and the other is softer. So I've actually prepared images for us to work from because I control the light in them. That way it's really easy to see where it's light and where it's dark, and sort of everything in between. So all you're going to need is a pencil. This time you need a pencil. If you have an eraser, that's great. If you don't, it doesn't matter. And for this first exercise, when we're going to use lines, you need your pencil to be pretty sharp. And that's because it's easier to make lines clearly without them sort of all running together. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with an image that we're going to work from step by step. Okay, any questions or comments before we start drawing? Okay, so let's see. Do you like my clover background? Okay, so we're going to start. I picked this on purpose. I photographed this on my balcony with the sun this morning, just an empty flower pot. And I chose this because it's very easy to see the light and then the shadow, right? And then this here on the table is the cast shadow. Now, there's also a shadow in here, right? Because the sun is coming from up here, and so it doesn't receive as much light in this corner because of the shape of how it's rounded off here. Now, one thing to note is it's interesting how here it's very dark, and as it moves around, it gets lighter. And then where the pot meets the shadow on the ground, one thing that's really good for seeing shadows is if you squint your eyes and just look through your eyelashes. So they become abstract shapes where you can't see details as much. Now I want you to squint your eyes, looking through your eyelashes, and compare the edge of the pot in the sun and the light versus the edge of the pot here in shadow where it meets the cast shadow. Now you see how where the pot is in the light against the white table, the edge is very clear and distinct. It's very crisp. But then when you move your eye over to this side, the shadow side, the edge of the pot where that meets the cast shadow on the table, they're almost indistinguishable. Like there's a big difference in the line, right, between those two. So that's going to be really important information when we're making shadows. So the first step in making our shadows is, I have another image here. Okay, this is like, what I did is I just sketched in the outline of the object, the pot, and then I also sketched in where the shadow is. So here's the shadow on the pot, also up here, and then the cast shadow on the table with, I just sort of indicated that it's sitting on a table, so it doesn't look like it's floating in space, but with this shadow on the ground, it actually won't look like it's floating in space anyway. Then the next step after that was I decided to use vertical, straight, fairly even lines on the pot to show where the shadow is. And then where the cast shadow is, I made them more horizontal. Now, I did that as a conscious choice because this object, the pot, is vertical and the table is horizontal. So I would say let's take a few minutes and using this image, just follow these first steps, which is one, make a light sketch of, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look exactly like the object. It's a pot, so it's a simple shape, right? But they're two circles, one on top and one on the bottom, with the cast shadow. And then we're going to sketch in the shadow lines and then indications of where they're shaded. So any questions? Can ask me in the chat box, or you can, unmute yourself. Oh, sorry. Chat. Okay. So how about we'll just take, I would say, let's have 3 minutes just to start sketching this in, and then I'll check in with you and see how it's going. And we'll go from there, okay? Let's start. Okay. So how's it going? Do people need more time? Is that enough time? Good. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. That's good. So Enough time. Great. Perfect. Now, what there is to do next is to refine it, right? And the things that there are to do to refine it, I didn't take a picture of it, but here's my sketch. I'm going to fold this. And what I did is I worked a little bit to refine. Maybe here it's really dark, and here where the edges meet, they sort of start to blend together. So like when you squint, you can't see so clearly that where the pot stops and the shadow, the cast shadow starts. So also what I wanted to say is this is an experiment, right? So if you've never used, these are sort of, lines to shade before, it's just an experiment. And one important thing that's experimenting is it's also good to try things to find out whether you like doing them or using them as a tool or not. So you're just trying this out. And if you don't like it, you don't have to use it in the future. That's why we're going to practice 2 different techniques. So what I'd say is I'll put the image back up for just 1 more minute and work to refine things like, where is there really high contrast? Like, where is it really dark against really light? And here it kind of transitions from dark, middle, then to light. And here it's really like dark against light. And then here it kind of blends together. Okay, so we'll just have 1 more minute to refine these, and then we'll come back together and have some sharing. See what happened. Okay. Okay. So we're going to stop. Okay, so does anybody want to share or ask questions like, how did it go? Did you like this? Did you not like it? Results, thoughts?
Hey, Kelly. I just have a question. I remember when you said that when we were just drawing these shadow lines, and that whether you drew them horizontally or vertically depended on the shape of the object, that if the shadow was lying on the ground, it's horizontal. But my instinct was to do the opposite. Is to do horizontal lines because of how the light was falling, and that would be easier for me to shape this part darker and that part lighter. So does that have implications or?
No, not at all. I mean, the thing is, if it makes sense to you, then you should do that. And I mean, how did it turn out? Do you feel like visually, did it make sense as well?
I need to try it 1 more time because I didn't really finish the exercise.
Sorry. Did I not give you enough time? You need more time.
No, I redrew it because I was confused about the lines because I'm a very brain-oriented person. I'm like, my lines are wrong, and I'm not doing it right. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of a more analytical way of drawing too, especially with the lines. Lines seem to be more analytical, and they actually take more thought. Like, it's true. Sometimes you want to experiment with, you know, different directions, and then actually you can even go on top of them back in another direction, right? So you get this cross hatching. So really, it's something to experiment with a lot more. We're just sort of doing a sampling of it here. Cool. Thanks, Teresa. Okay, anyone else?
I'll share. Okay, so
Hi,
that's, hi, Kelly. So what I really liked in the explanation in particular was the squinting through your glasses and seeing that shape. That was very revealing to me. But then the lines, I guess it gave me a framework added in, but the depth and of kind of like punching it out more. But I guess I saw 2 layers of shadow in like the side of it, and I was trying to show that it looked like, once you look at it, you can kind of see like pointy shapes down the end and stuff like that. So I tried to replicate that, but didn't do so well in making that happen.
Yeah, so it's true. Like shadows become objects in and of themselves, right? Especially when you squint your eyes, they become these abstract shapes almost. So it's a good way to take your focus off the outline of an object and to start looking right inside and to see the shadows. No, that's great. I mean, this is an experiment, so we don't have a lot of time. So this is something that just gives you a way to approach it that then you can hopefully practice over and over again on your own, right? But squinting is a really good way to see shadows abstractly as shapes, but also to see where they're soft and where they're hard, right? Sometimes they just blend together and become one big shape. Very cool. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if no one else wants to share, we're gonna do another exercise with shading, but this time we're gonna not use lines for shading, we're gonna use the side of our pencil. So before we start, I wanna just say a little bit of something. I just wanna say something about different ways of holding a pencil. So we all have a way that we're used to holding a pencil since we've had to learn to write since, you know, when we were little. Now, you know, there is this way or some variation of this, right? Depending if you're right or left-handed or whatever, but there's a way of holding your pencil that's some version of this. Now, we do this a lot with when we make lines, right? And it's a very controlled way of holding your pencil. So it's a great way to draw. It's fine to draw and write this way, but just to make note, when you hold your pencil this way, the only movement you're getting is really from your wrist. So it really limits your movement, and we all tend, I mean, if you draw for a couple of hours, your hand will start to cramp. You probably don't realize you're like gripping your pencil, right? So this gives us a more controlled movement. Now, when you want to shade big areas, a good way or another way to hold your pencil can be like this. I'm going to use a longer pencil. Mine's really short. So I put it in either here or somewhere, usually like this last part of my fingers, and hold it. And I turn it on its side. So I'm literally holding the pencil like this so that the side can make these sort of larger shading areas easily. Now you can control it with the tip, right, the first and second finger, or you'll find some variation of holding your pencil like this. Even if it's uncomfortable because it's odd, I would say try it once for this exercise And the reason why is because when you hold your pencil like this, you use your whole arm. So, sorry, I'm just gonna mute. So you're now able to get a wider range of movement, and it might seem like you don't have as much control, but you actually do, and it gives you a nice, even flowing movement that this doesn't allow you to have. So that's just a note about different ways of holding your pencil can actually affect your drawings quite a lot, and can produce really different results. So I really encourage you to try holding your pencil in different ways and see how you draw. And sometimes it just takes practice, right? You have to override your, you know, all the neural pathways we have for holding a pencil. Okay, so what we're gonna do this time is I've chosen a white egg on a white background and ground, so that with one light source. So it's this really sort of subtle light effect, and it can be a little more challenging, also because ironically, the shape of an egg is actually quite difficult to draw, but that doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to work from this image of an egg that's receiving light from one side and has shadow and is casting a shadow also on the ground or the table. Now we'll start in the same way by drawing an outline lightly of both the object and the cast shadow and the shadow on the object. I'm going to just show you so I don't have to explain something abstractly. So here's what we're going to draw this time. And see that the shadow is following the form, right, or the shape of the egg. And the light is coming from here very strongly. And I mean, look how many versions of white there are, right? And then the shadow is being cast on the ground. Now, you see this little strip of light here? So that's something that happens a lot with round objects, and this is called reflected light. And what that is light from here below is bouncing up into here and reflecting onto the shadow side of the egg. So one thing when we draw is to be aware of it, but again, you want to squint your eyes down before you draw it, just to see how dramatic is the shift, right? Like, it's not, you can tell there's more of a line here delineating the reflected light from the shadow, right? It's softer here. Here we can barely see a line at all. Here, right, this is the darkest part of the shadow, meaning this is the part of the egg that's receiving the least amount of light. And here it's moving towards the light. So this is sort of a little bit of a shadow or a halftone, the shadow back to halftone and reflected light. So that all sounds complicated, but really we just want to start by, first, simple outline sketch. Doesn't matter if it's exactly the right shape, right? So we're just outlining, this is the shape of the egg. This is where the shadow falls on the egg, and this is where the shadow is being cast on the table. Then the next step is, with the side of your pencil, just lightly shade in everything, sort of all the same tone, using the side of your pencil and not the tip. And then the third step is, where it's darker, just go and make these darker places, right? And then I left the light here and then made it darker in the places where I saw it was darker. Okay, so there are 3 steps. Oops, sorry. Simple outline. Also, like noting, you know, drawing in where the shadows are, the shapes of them. Then shading everything that's in shadow and one light sort of tone all together with the side of your pencil. And then the final stage is darkening the places where it's darker. But go tread lightly, right? They're soft transitions, right? There aren't any very hard transitions here. So I just want to see, are there any questions before we start? Okay. So I'm just going to set a timer for maybe what? How about we'll do, we'll have 5 minutes to do the whole thing. If at any point you have questions, can you just unmute yourself and ask a question, because I'll be sharing my screen and won't see if you're typing in the chat box. Okay, so we will start and see how far we get in 5 minutes. Okay, and start.
Okay, just one more minute.
Okay, and stop. Okay. So I'd love to hear what happened. How did it go? Also, did you prefer lines or using the side of your pencil, or did you find one, more challenging than the other? Do you have any questions?
Hi, Kelly. This is Sandy.
Hi, let me find you.
I really, I was challenged by both techniques, but what I found is if I actually concentrated on squinting, even with the second technique, I could see some more darks that I wasn't seeing before.
Great. So it let you see more variation in the shadow.
Yes, that's just like big to me right now. Like, oh, they're there.
Yeah. So do you remember any observations you had about about the shadows that you were looking at?
I think especially on the top of the egg, there was definitely a little bit of a dark shadow just as the light was shading on the egg itself. Not the shadow, but just the shading on the egg itself. I went, wow, I didn't see that before.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so the more you look, sort of the more you see. Very
Excellent.
good. Yeah. Yeah, something to always sort of look for is, where is the lightest light and where is the darkest dark? And do they meet in the same place or not? Usually the darkest dark is probably, the bottom of the object where it's sitting on something, or the shadow that's right next to but not always, right? So you want to just sort of notice what you see, and not all shadows are the same. Cool. Okay, so some people are writing, Suzanne says, I like the new way of holding the pencil. Cool. I'm glad you tried it, because really trying new ways of holding your pencil really can have you create different drawings. Using the side of the pencil was easier, but the egg, was harder. Yeah, so this is an extreme, and there's actually a lot happening, right? So as the egg turns away, right, it gets really dark, but then as it turns again, it comes back towards the light. So there's sort of like a lot of light in the dark, and there's a lot to see. It's deceivingly simple. It looks simple, but it's not at all. That's great. So even noticing, making new observations is really important. Diane says it's very interesting to see all the variations in the shadow. So this looks like it was a common observation. Yeah, so you want to be careful this is why I had you start with the egg shadow, make it all one flat tone, right? And pretty light. That way, then you can go back and make variations like darker, because you don't want it to be too patchworky that it needs to still be unified or have the sense of it's all a shadow, right? Moving away from the light. But there are variations inside of it, right? It's not flat actually at all. And that's for a lot of different reasons that we looked at. Okay, anybody else? Does anybody want to share?
Here it goes.
That's you.
Who's that?
It is? Okay. Is it okay? I used both ways of holding the pencil. Going back and forth. I was uncomfortable at first with your new way, but then for the larger shaded places, it was easier, I discovered, and I could get a feel for it. But then I went back to making lines with the other way. And I also found that while I was having a good time and feeling like it was going okay, I didn't want to run out of time. And when I was doing the last one, I was doing badly, and I was thinking, oh, hurry up time. I want to be done. Anyway.
Yeah, so maybe the time thing puts you under pressure. Okay, that's cool.
Extra
Well,
things. Yeah.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't hear you.
Well, it means that we get to do two exercises instead of one long one or something. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, well, and then, hopefully you could try it on your own so you're not pressured for time and can do
Yeah.
it, in your own time that's right for you. Something too is like sometimes we just spend too long on drawings. Not
Yeah.
always, but sometimes. Okay, that's cool. Well, thank you for trying something new, right? It's not easy to try new things. It is uncomfortable sometimes. Let's see, April said the one tone and then add the variations was brilliant and very helpful, Joetta. Okay, yeah, good. I'm glad you found that helpful. Because if you try to make all the variations in one go, it could feel patchworky and not like it's all right of the same material, right? Or it's just all of the same shadow. And Teresa said, I'm glad stationery stores are opening back up since I need a pencil sharpener. Yes. Yeah, if you have like a box cutter knife or something like that, you can always use that to sharpen your pencil. Yeah, life is tough without a pencil sharpener. I have about 10 at my house, which I could give you. Okay, cool. Well, does anybody want to comment, share, have any other questions?
I'd like to comment real fast.
Yeah. Hey, Pierre.
Hey, so what amazed me, I love the squinting thing. Seeing an egg in shadow like that and like really focusing and noticing darker on the top, it's like, it's so complex. It's so complex.
Yes.
Like there's no way to get it right away. And it's humbling, you know? I mean, not that I'm
Yes.
but it's just humbling to be like, there's an egg in shadow. I draw that and then be very kind of, anyway, just that observation. And the fact that the slightest little shadow somewhere can make a huge difference in the drawing. I mean, it can pull your eye to a certain place. It could take you away from something. It could make something look distorted. It's so, it seems so influential to the drawing. So it's really nice to be able to have some of your techniques to use this.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, shadows are really, really important, integral part of drawing. So this is kind of a warm-up to even start really focusing on shadows away from just the outline of objects. That sounds great. Yeah, actually an egg is in shadow is very difficult to draw. So it's something that ideally you would spend a lot more time on, right? And you could start with this very light tone and then slowly build up the darker tones. If you have a soft eraser, you can always take that and sort of, take out, if it gets too dark, you can take out some of the darks and move it back towards light without it being harsh, right? It can stay soft.
According to you, what do you think is the darkest area of the drawing? I think you might have showed us, but I think I found one.
Oh, yeah, I thought, let's see, it's like right when it goes from the past tone, it has a very distinct shape. It has this like triangular shape, the dark. And then there's this triangle. It's also, right? I think these two shapes are the darkest. Is how I saw it. And it's interesting, like cast shadows are never the same, right? They're never flat in the sense that they're usually darker, right? Closer to the object. And then as you move away from the object, they tend to get lighter. So that's how I saw it.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you got something out of this. I hope it can be helpful, in spending time on longer drawings, right? Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, wait. Let me put you on the big screen so you can see. Yeah, and you also have this amazing light and shadow effect going on in your house right now. Nice. Very nice. Thank you. Okay.
Ellie, I have a question. It's Mary. Do you ever start a drawing using the side of your pencil just so you can do bigger shapes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And can also, did I make it impossible for you to turn on your video? Sorry, Mary. I was going to let you turn on your video. Okay. Definitely. Now, you can also just sketch in with the side of your pencil and make soft outlines. You can also, not use any lines at all. This is what we'll do the next class about shadows. Is we won't use any lines at all, and just the side of your pencil to think about shapes and tones. So like shadows and shapes and a very specific tone. Like, sorry? Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, somebody was saying it's hard to hear or see me. Thank you. Is this better? Can everyone hear or see
Yeah,
me?
that's
okay?
better. I think if we turn our video off, it's better.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Now, sometimes our connection gets a little lost. So yes, definitely. To answer your question, definitely. And if you feel comfortable doing that, you should definitely just start with the side of your pencil. You don't have to draw with lines either. You can just start by making a shape, right? So what I mean is I could actually start. Now, I can't drawing like but you can use the side of your pencil and just start drawing this way, right? And making your drawing without ever outlining it first. So we're actually going to do that. But, I encourage you to try it. Some people seem to think more in lines, and some people it's easier to think in shapes. Okay. Okay, so any questions, shares, anything? Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being willing participant, for trying new things, for sharing. It's really, everyone learns from everyone else, so it's very helpful when you can share your insights or questions or your work. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Good. Mary said she learned a lot. Thank you for doing this. Very helpful, useful information. Happy Easter to anyone who celebrates Easter tomorrow. Yes, shadows are challenging. Somebody is saying shadows are challenging for me. This is great. Thank you. Super helpful, especially the bit about the cast shadow being darker closer to the object. Yeah. So, just it's not always the case, but just look and see, start to notice and make observations